Hello and welcome. A state of emergency with no clear end in sight has Pakistanis wondering if the election set for January could actually be free and fair. The growing public tension between President Pervez Musharraf and the opposition leader Benazir Bhutto have added to what has become a serious constitutional crisis. Thousands of people remain jailed after street protests led to a harsh crackdown under tough military rule. Opposition parties have threatened to boycott the election if General Musharraf does not lift the severe restrictions. There's also growing pressure from the United States for a solution. On today's show, we examine the increasingly complex picture in Pakistani politics. Now, don't forget, we take your questions and comments on this program. The numbers are there on your screen. Joining me from London to discuss this is Wajid Shamsul Hassan, a close and long-time advisor to the Pakistani People Party leader Benazir Bhutto and former Pakistani High Commissioner in Britain. Also with us from Dubai is Anwar Sher, a Pakistan observer and columnist for Emirates Today. He's joining us from Dubai. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
I'd like to start off actually with Mr. Hassan in London and ask, considering that it's still a couple of months away, at this stage, the way things look, could you see a fair and free election taking place in Pakistan in January?
Well, I don't see any fair and free elections when the state of emergency has been imposed. The Supreme Court has been sacked, Chief Justice has been sacked, there's a total clampdown in the country on the media. TV channels have been blacked out, journalists are being hunted, so many anchors have fled from Pakistan to Dubai. So if in that situation, how can you expect free and fair elections, especially when the ruling party is still in power and they are determined to rig elections as they have already planned them. And so I don't see any prospects of free and fair elections unless there is an independent election commission, an interim government, independent interim government, and General Musharraf reverses the decision regarding the Supreme Court and also the Constitution, abrogation of the Constitution and its placement by this provisional constitutional order, which gives them absolute power to do anything. Besides that, I must tell you that he has also introduced this military martial law courts against the civilians as well. He will try civilians in martial law courts. That is draconian, and that will be disastrous for the development of democracy in the country.
Let me get Mr. Anwar Sher in from Dubai and ask, sir, do you share this pessimistic view on what might happen in January?
A lot depends over the next few weeks on how General Musharraf, the political parties, the judiciary, and everybody plays their role. There is no denying that it is a very difficult time for Pakistan. However, we have to keep in mind that what General Musharraf promised as an emergency measure based upon what he said an extremist threat, he has done nothing about the extremist threat. It's been 7 days. Nothing has happened in Waziristan or Swat, where a large number of the threat that we see comes from. It is also impossible to have an election where only, if possible, as the way things are going, only one political leader is there to contest it. I believe the judiciary, which unfortunately has also taken sides, rather than come out and say they only want to uphold the judicial law and seek for both political parties, and in fact all of them, to contest a free and fair election. General Musharraf has definitely created a situation which has put Pakistan pretty much on the brink of a terrible disaster.
Let me ask Mr. Hassan, considering how close you are to Benazir Bhutto, the opposition leader who's the most visible there in Pakistan right now, I wonder, sir, how much pressure there is on Ms. Bhutto to try and keep some sort of dialogue, some sort of cooperation going with President Musharraf in the interest of reaching some kind of solution to the political crisis in the country?
No, Ms. Bhutto tried her best to carry on a dialogue with him before she returned to Pakistan, and she wanted that there should be a peaceful transition to democracy through vote. But unfortunately that didn't work out, because General Musharraf, whatever promises he made, he went back on them, and now he has imposed a state of emergency. And he has made it a very strange sort of emergency. He says that it is against terrorism and against terrorists, against extremism and militancy. But his first victim was the Supreme Court of Pakistan, the Chief Justice, and the lawyers community, President of the Bar Association, political activists, journalists, media. So you can imagine what sort of direction he has taken to impose emergency instead of striking at the terrorists, as Sheikh Saab said just now, that he has not done anything substantive to curb what is happening in Swat. You know, every day one town is falling to the rebels who are putting their flag, replacing Pakistan's flag, and they are introducing Sharia, what they call Sharia laws in the conquered areas, as they call them.
Right.
And so it's a very difficult situation as such. And Ms. Bhutto is determined to fight back, and she is there in the streets of Pakistan today. Although they have imposed restrictions on her movement now, I believe till the time in the evening, they had barricaded Lahore house, put blockades, and they don't want her to get out of the house tomorrow when she starts her 165-mile march to Islamabad. And as they did in Rawalpindi the other day, when they blocked the house and put barbed wire against her and did not let her out. But the rest of the country did come out. There were protests all over Pakistan, in Peshawar, in Sindh, in Punjab, in Balochistan. Everywhere people came out to protest against what was happening in Rawalpindi.
Right. I would like to get an email actually that we got from a viewer here, and Anwar Sher, if I can ask you to respond to this. It's an email from Nira Bhatt, who wrote in saying, the deal between Musharraf and Bhutto broke down because of Musharraf's greed, nothing else. And I wonder, from your perspective, where do the biggest differences between Benazir Bhutto and Pervez Musharraf lie?
I personally think that Benazir Bhutto should also think beyond just a deal between her and General Musharraf. It's an issue of a larger platform of all the political parties to be a part of such a deal. Initially, there were a lot of talks between Nawaz Sharif's political party and Benazir and other political parties to form a common platform. I personally do not think that at the moment anyone is thinking of the country. All political parties have to get together. It's not just a question of Benazir Bhutto or Nawaz Sharif or indeed General Musharraf. It's a question of what is good for the country. You have a threat in Pakistan of extremism, which is very serious, and it cannot be combated unless you have all the political parties agreeing. There is a fallacy to think that only Benazir Bhutto or General Musharraf or indeed only Nawaz Sharif have an interest in saving the country. All political parties do. And I think what Benazir Bhutto should talk about, along with Nawaz Sharif, is a government of national reconstruction. I don't see enough people power on the streets yet to depose General Musharraf. Right. It is quite likely there might be other solutions.
Let me put another question to you, Mr. Sher, that came in from email from Auckland in New Zealand. And Hare Tukariri says, should Musharraf volunteer to step down and general elections are held with Bhutto triumphant, what guarantees are there that democracy will reign? And of course, we know that Benazir Bhutto was formerly Prime Minister twice. And of course, there were issues of corruptions, allegations against her and so on. What guarantee is there, based on that question, you think that democracy could reign, Mr. Sher?
The basic elements of democracy has to be a strong judiciary and a free media. General Musharraf has definitely not respected those, and unfortunately both the political parties in power previously in varying degrees have not respected this promise of not interfering with the judiciary or indeed muzzling the press. What Pakistan needs at the moment is a bondsmanship to come out from the political parties or an independent strong judiciary which will oversee and govern a system. Maybe we have to rewrite the constitution and create some more checks and balances for everybody. It is sad that in 60 years we still haven't found a solution and we keep having the military to intervene. On your question of General Musharraf stepping down, I don't see that happening. The stakes are too high. It is quite possible that the army itself, which is disgruntled within its rank and file, might find their own solutions.
Let me ask Mr. Hassan here that, you know, both yourself and Mr. Sher have mentioned what you see as a lack of action by President Musharraf against terrorism. And of course, this is one of the big conditions for the US giving Mr. Musharraf so much slack. What would Benazir Bhutto do differently in terms of fighting terrorism that would perhaps achieve the wishes of the US?
Well, our primary concern has been to restoration of democracy, and we believe and we have complete faith in it that only by mobilizing people of Pakistan, as Mr. Sher also said, that people of Pakistan, especially all political parties, all national leaders, should they shall have to get together to save the country at the moment, which is really in a very bad shape. And this was the reason that Ms. Bhutto went ahead with an engagement and dialogue with Mr. Musharraf, so that a way could be found for a peaceful transfer of power to the representatives of the people. But unfortunately, that did not suit in the game of General Musharraf, and he has resorted to extra constitutional measures, and he doesn't want proper democratic norms to work in Pakistan today, and that perhaps is the greatest threat to the country. And I entirely agree that the country demands and requires that everybody, every conscientious person has got to join hands to save the country. And it's not General Musharraf who can alone do it. As a matter of fact, for a long time, he was considered part of the problem, not the solution. The terrorism that we see in the country, they have been, some sort of running with the hare and hunting with the hounds. That sort of situation has prevailed for much too long in Pakistan. And today, what you see in North Waziristan, South Waziristan, and Swat, every day some territory is falling to the rebels, and that is a very alarming situation. While army is being deployed, while police is being deployed to curb civil activities, civil society, journalists, lawyers, and the judges all being, clamped down, and the terrorists are romping around the country freely without any, threat from anywhere.
Mr. Hassan, a quick thought. You were the former High Commissioner, Pakistani High Commissioner in Britain. What role is Europe playing in this? Of course, we know the US has been pretty vocal in what they would like to see, but what about Europe?
Let me tell you something. It was very difficult to knock at all the doors in Europe, America, and England to convince them that it is only democracy that can save the situation in Pakistan. And it took us, Ms. Bhutto especially, she has been trying very hard to convince the West that you have got to support democracy if you want the region to become normal. We sincerely believe that if you want to have democracy in Afghanistan or stability in Afghanistan, you have to have democracy and stability in Pakistan first. And that has been the reason that we went into negotiations with General Musharraf, and we still want that all the political parties should join hands and make a combined effort to bring about sense to the General, and his own colleagues in the army should also prevail on him to see the light of reason and call it a day and hand over power to the chairman of the Senate, and so that a fresh election could be held in Pakistan and judiciary be restored to its previous setup that it was under the Chief Justice Iftikhar Mohammad Chaudhry. Otherwise, I think this will be very difficult because we are moving towards anarchy, and the Taliban or the Mujahideen or whatever you call them, they are gaining territory, and once they establish a territory of their own and establish a sort of country of their own, a state of their own, then it will be very difficult for any other force to counter it.
So let me get in a call we have from London. Sohail is on the line. Sohail, what would you like to ask?
Just a quick, two quick comments and questions. If Pervez Musharraf is found guilty of treason, and should we think after the change of the government, a death penalty is waiting for him, number one. Number two, if political parties are being oppressed like this, should we think that there's a time that all the political parties should have their own force in order to fight for the democracy against its own army? Thank you very much.
Okay, let me get to Anwar Sher in Dubai and actually add this question that came by email from Abida Sheikh in South Africa, because it touches on the same things that Sohail spoke about there. Can General Musharraf be charged with reckless behavior for undermining democratic institutions, plunging the country into instability and declaring martial law when it was not needed? Anwar Sher, again, Sohail was asking, could there be charge of treason against President Musharraf?
Indeed, constitutionally, yes, he has violated the constitution, not once but twice. As far as the question of each political party having their own militia, this is highly undesirable. This is what caused many civil wars, as we saw in other countries. Lebanon is a good example. So that is not the solution. The army in itself has to be encouraged to find the solution here. General Musharraf will not step down. There are forces within the country who recognize this. If you just see the situation in Swat, where a lot of the line commanders refuse to fight. To combat terrorism and combat extremism, you don't need a military government. You need to educate your people. You need a free, fair election to bring about a government that has a vested interest. It is a fallacy to think that even the religious parties want terrorism. They don't. They may have a religious view. Doesn't mean that they support the Taliban or they want to create what happened in Afghanistan prior to the problems we saw during the Taliban regime.
But let me.
So I don't think that that is a solution.
Mr. Sher, let me ask you though, there's a fear obviously in the West that with no strong political leadership in sight, that people may be driven to religious extremism, that they may find only answers through that. And I wonder what your view is on that.
The issue of religious extremism is different than the issue of Al-Qaeda. A lot of the Western commentators mix the two up. I'm from the tribal area, from the north, and there is always been a conservative element in the tribal areas, which is being exploited at the moment. So from a Western perspective, their solution lies in talking to a broad platform of political parties, including Nawaz Sharif. They should not only have discussions with Benazir on the issue of terrorism, there are other strong political parties who will have a vested interest. My fear is that if only Benazir contests this election and obviously wins, the terrorism won't be less. Baitullah Masood in Waziristan is hell-bent on declaring an independent state. This itself, the judiciary should call as treason and act upon it. So what we are faced with is a complete breakdown.
Okay, Mr. Anwar Sher, I have to thank you very much there, Mr. Wajid Shamsul Hassan. Thank you very much for joining us. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but of course we will follow this this topic of what's going on in Pakistan and keep you updated through the news and obviously the show as well. To share more of your thoughts on this topic, do check out our question of the week. You just log on to aljazeera.net/English, where we're asking what can be done to bring peace and security to Pakistan. We'd really like to hear from you and particularly like to get your thoughts via video mail, and I'll try to include as many of those as I can in the program. Thanks for being with us. On tomorrow's show, we look at the ongoing conflict over the divided island of Cyprus from the Turkish Cypriot perspective. Send in your questions and thoughts on that matter to riz@aljazeera.net. We'll see you next time. Street Talk is next.